Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I walked into that house dripping wet, cold enough my hands shook, straight into their lakefront living room, where the chandeliers looked like they cost more than my truck. Sloane hissed my name like I was some stray dog that slipped past the valet. "Brandon," she snapped under her breath, eyes cutting toward the marble floors. "You're soaked." Celeste smiled at a guy in a navy suit and reached over to pinch my elbow like I was a kid interrupting dinner. "Let's not cause a scene," she said between her teeth. Her rings sparkled like they were trying to blind me. Martin stood near the fireplace, one hand on a rocks glass, talking to three men in tuxes. He didn't even glance at me when he said, "Let's take this to the study." I followed him down the hallway like I was heading into court. "Our daughter collapsed," I said before he shut the door. "Doctor says congenital heart defect. Needs surgery in 36 hours. They need a deposit before they schedule." Martin finally turned and looked at me. "How much is deposit?" 41.5. He let out this sigh like I'd asked to borrow his golf cart for the weekend. "That's unfortunate timing," he said, walking to his desk. "I already wired 190 to Chase's wedding coordinator, Aspen, and the Maldives." Non-refundable Chase was leaning in the doorway, tux jacket slung over one shoulder, hair slicked back like some kind of budget Gatsby. "Have you tried GoFundMe?" he asked, grinning. "Normal people use that stuff." I stared at him for half a second too long. He grinned wider. Sloane stepped inside then, her dress still perfect, voice low and tight. "This isn't the time, Brandon. We can't hijack Chase's engagement night. And honestly, your lack of insurance is embarrassing. Quick note, before we start the next part, share in the comments how's your day going and where you're joining from. And let's continue." I just stood there. "You made choices," she added. "You need to own them." That's when I took off the Omega watch they'd given me last Christmas, still ticking, probably never worn more than 3 times, and set it on Martin's desk. "You can have this back," I said. "June's not a bill you get to dodge." Celeste appeared in the doorway with a glass of white wine and said we could regroup after the weekend. Martin was already scrolling through his phone. I stood there soaked and shaking, not from the rain anymore. Nobody moved. So I walked out past the catering staff, past the string quartet, past the champagne tower they built for Chase like he was royalty. Outside, the rain had stopped, but my boots still squelched with every step. I pulled out my phone, typed out a quick message to the surgeon. Working on it. Then I hit send. Then I promised myself, right there, on their stupid stone steps, that I'd never ask that house for anything again. I was still standing in the driveway. The porch light flickered, half burned out, and I just stood there under it, dripping on the concrete, thinking about what the hell I was going to do next. At 2:11 a.m., I was at the kitchen table with a notebook, my phone, and a mug of cold coffee that had gone stale hours ago. I called 3 banks, 2 credit unions, and even my old union rep from back when I was still doing drywall on schools. Every single voice on the other end sounded exactly the same. Polite, scripted, and useless. "No collateral? I'm sorry, sir, we can't approve a rush loan without..." "I understand your urgency, Mr. Avery, but these types of exceptions aren't standard practice. Cute kids don't count as assets, unfortunately." I hung up, stared at the fridge door like it might open and spit out cash, and called the last number in my list. It rang 6 times, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. By 6 that morning, I was parked in front of a guy's house in Spanaway, handing over the title to my '96 Bronco. He gave me $940, cash. I didn't ask questions. Then I hauled ass back to Tacoma, put my cabinet saw in the bed of a borrowed truck, and sold it to a woodworker in Lacey for $1,600. I walked into a pawn shop with my framing nailer, and the guy behind the counter, some 20-something with fake military patches on his vest, looked at it like it was a broken toaster. $300, he said. I didn't argue. I took it. That made a little over 11 grand in one morning, and I still felt like I was drowning. I called Brennan next. We'd built houses side by side for almost 8 years, and he'd helped me land some of my early bids when I went solo. He picked up on the first ring. "You sound like hell," he said. "I need cash," I told him. "Fast." He didn't even ask why. "I could bridge you," he said, "but I'd need a piece. Just short term. Like 10% of the LLC, maybe 12, just for protection." Jesus, Brennan. It's business, man. Not personal. I know it's for June, but I gotta protect myself too. I told him to shove it, hung up, then called back 10 minutes later and said sorry. He accepted the apology, but I still said no to the deal. By 6:27 a.m., I was back home, leaning on the counter like it might hold me up, when I heard a knock. It was soft, like someone didn't want to be heard. I opened the door and there they were, my dad in his work coat, and my mom with her curls pinned back tight. Dad took off his hat as he stepped inside, like we were standing at someone's grave. Neither of them said anything at first. Mom walked straight to the coffee table and set down an old manila envelope. It hit the wood with a slap. Thick. "We sold the fifth wheel," she said. I blinked. "What?" "The trailer," she repeated. "The big one. Took it to Yakima last week. Your dad sold the base boat too." My mouth was open, but nothing came out. "There's 41.5 in there," Dad said, eyes on the envelope. "Some in cash, some cashiers. Should cover the deposit. I can't take that." "You can argue about pride," he said, still not looking at me. "Or you can schedule your daughter's surgery, son." That's it, I sat down. I didn't cry. I didn't thank them. I just nodded once and picked up the envelope. The hospital billing office was open by 8, and I was the first call they answered. The lady on the other end had that stiff tone like she'd been saying "unfortunately" to people for 15 years straight. "I have the payment," I said. "Cash and a check." 41.5. There was a pause. Then her voice changed, warmer, lighter, like a button had been unclicked. "We can book 1:30 p.m. tomorrow," she said. "She's in." I didn't even sit down. I just leaned on the counter and let my knees shake. That covered the deposit. The rest would go through insurance and a payment plan. The future could fight me later. I had one job right now: get June into that OR. I pulled out my phone and texted Sloan the update. "Surgery scheduled." Paid the deposit. She texted back a thumbs-up emoji. Then another message came right after. "Please don't blow up the family chat with drama." That was it. No, "thank you." No, "I'll be there." No, "how?" Just that. I didn't respond. I didn't have anything left to say that wouldn't burn something down. I sat on the floor in our hallway and held the envelope in my lap like it might still be warm from my mom's hands. My hands were black with pawnshop grease and road dust, and I looked around our half-finished house like I was seeing it for the first time. No backup, no savings, no safety net, just grit and duct tape and people who sell their boats when it counts. I sat in that waiting room like my bones had been hollowed out and replaced with worry. The coffee was burnt and metallic, tasted like hot pennies and dust. I sipped it anyway, because it gave my hands something to do. June's stuffed rabbit sat in my lap. One ear was chewed flat from when she was teething. The nurse said most kids brought something into surgery like a shield. I didn't argue. I held the damn thing like it was sacred. Sloan showed up around 9:30. She looked like she'd walked off a magazine cover, lipstick perfect, heels clicking like punctuation. She sat across from me, didn't touch the coffee, didn't ask how I was doing. She spent most of the hour using her phone camera like a mirror, fixing smudges, adjusting angles. Then she posted something. Probably that family emergency prayers up story I'd hear about later. I only caught a glimpse of the screen, but the photo she used wasn't of June. It was from her parents' party 2 nights ago. She left without saying goodbye, just stood, straightened her skirt, said, "Text me if anything changes," and walked off. My dad, Hank, didn't say a word for 10 straight hours. Sat next to me with his elbows on his knees, his back bowed like he was in church. Every time a nurse passed through the hallway, he looked up quick, then settled again. Man didn't eat, didn't move, just stayed. That's how he loves. By sticking. Mom brought a Tupperware from home sometime after dark. It had a piece of tape on top that read, "June's dad." I told her I wasn't hungry, and she said, "I know," then handed it to the night nurse anyway. Around 11 o'clock, I checked my phone and instantly regretted it. Chase had sent me a selfie, him in some cabana, glass of champagne in one hand, white shirt unbuttoned to the middle. The caption said, "Hang in there, champ." I turned the phone over and stared at the tile grout like it might crack open and suck me under. My hands were shaking again. I dug my fingers into the rabbit stuffing to keep them still. It was nearly midnight when the surgeon came out. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, cap still on, face raw with exhaustion. He walked right up to me and didn't bother with a let-in. "She's stable," he said. "We fixed what needed fixing." I sat down fast because my legs just gave up. The noise I made didn't sound like relief or joy. It sounded like air being let out of something that had been overfilled for too long. "She's in recovery," he added. "You'll be able to see her soon." I nodded. I couldn't get any words out. Dad put a hand on my shoulder and gave it one quick squeeze. It was enough. The call from Sloan came before I even got up from the chair. I saw her name flash across the screen and picked up, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd say something human. Instead, she asked, "Will the hospital send me the itemized stuff directly, or do I need to request it?" I didn't answer right away. "I'm asking," she said, "because if the debts go on your side of the ledger, I don't want this dragging me down. We should probably talk to someone about a legal separation. Just to protect me and June long term, I didn't say anything. Just looked at my dad again, who looked back at me like he was ready to throw the phone into the nearest wall if I handed it to him. I finally said, "Okay." Not because I agreed, not because I was fine with it, just because I was tired. Bone deep tired. Our kid was alive. That was all I had room for. She hung up without a goodbye. The nurse brought me back to recovery 30 minutes later. June was hooked up to more machines than I could count. Her face looked smaller than it had yesterday, pale under the beeping lights. But her chest was rising. Her fingers twitched. She was still here. I sat by her side and tucked the rabbit next to her under the blankets. One of the nurses had put a tiny oxygen clip on its ear, and I almost laughed, except my throat was too tight. "Hey, baby girl," I whispered. "You did it." She didn't respond. She couldn't. But I leaned close anyway, and promised her something I meant down to my marrow. "I swear to you, June, I will never be this broke or this powerless again." I meant it, not just the money part. I meant never again would I have to crawl to people who thought family meant cocktail parties and curated Instagram posts. Never again would I sit in a chair outside an OR while someone who helped make her walked out because the lighting was bad. She made it through. I got her that far. Now it was on me to make the rest of the road worth walking. I got home from the hospital and didn't sleep for a full day. Just stood watch. Sat by June's bed like a guard, even though she was fine, and the machines had all been unplugged. Her breathing was soft and steady, her hair stuck to her forehead in damp strands, and every so often, she'd grip my thumb in her sleep like she remembered something she couldn't say. When she started eating again, I started moving. I picked up my tool belt like it owed me money and went back to job sites with a kind of fire in my chest I hadn't felt since I first went solo. The burn wasn't motivation, it was pressure. Pure, stubborn pressure to never be helpless again. So I started saying yes to work I had no business chasing. Big stuff. Risky stuff. Stuff that looked like it could eat me alive if I blinked. That's how I landed in a Zoom call with 6 Northline execs blinking at me from little boxes. 7 boutique inns, scattered from the Tri-Cities down to Bend, full gut and refresh. First phase worth $2.2 million. I'd never even touched a project that size before. Might as well have been quoting NASA. But I told myself what I told June before every shot at the hospital. You don't have to be the biggest, just the one who won't quit. One of the guys on the call, I think he was the CFO, leaned back in his chair and asked it straight. "How's a 3-man shop going to deliver full-scale refurb on 7 active properties?" I didn't flinch. "I don't build for photos," I said. I build for people who are tired and need to breathe. He blinked. The HR lady next to him scribbled something. Then I shared my screen and clicked through photos of the bungalow I'd rebuilt for my parents, the one they moved into after selling the fifth wheel and the base boat to save my kid's life. I showed them the kitchen. Lowered counters so Mom didn't have to stretch to reach a damn thing. The mudroom bench where Dad sat every morning to lace up his boots. I told them we made the threshold wider so he didn't have to shoulder the door when he came in carrying groceries. You give me this contract, I said, and I promise you, every guy and gal who swings a hammer on your job gets health insurance on day one. No fine print, no 90-day wait, no HR maze. Day one CFO checked his watch again like I was wasting time. But the woman from marketing, the one who hadn't spoken all meeting, stopped tapping her pen when I dropped a drawing on the camera. It was a lobby sketch. Cozy chairs. No fake plants. A quiet corner that was actually designed to be quiet. Not decorative. Not performative. Real. I know I don't look like much on paper, I said. But paper didn't build this business. Stories did. Some families pay for centerpieces. Other families sell their boats. I'm the kind of builder who knows which story matters. Nobody said anything for a few seconds. Then the meeting ended. That was it. No reaction. No promises. Just the awkward Zoom chime and a spinning wheel. I walked out of the house thinking I'd completely blown it. So I went to the backyard and fixed June's birdhouse. The thing had a busted perch, and the roof was crooked. Didn't matter. I just needed to build something that day. Something small and manageable and not worth $2.2 million. The next morning, I packed up early and went to finish a flooring job in Lacey. My knees hurt like hell from crouching so long, but I didn't stop. I didn't even check my phone. I wasn't waiting on a miracle. I was just working like a man who'd already learned not to count on them. That night, June asked if her birdhouse was fixed. Yeah, I said, setting it on the windowsill. Roof's tight now. New perch. She smiled, soft and sleepy, her arms still bruised where the IVs had gone in. Can we paint it? Tomorrow, I said. You can be the paint boss. She grinned at the title like it was a crown, and I swear, in that moment, I wanted to win that Northline job more than I'd ever wanted anything. Not for the check, not for the name, for her. Because if I got it, I'd never have to ask anyone for anything again. Especially not people who needed marble floors and champagne flutes to pretend they cared. 3 days later, the email landed while I was eating cereal at the counter, still in boots from the site. Subject line, Notice of Award. I didn't open it at first, just stared at it like it might explode if I clicked the wrong part. June sat across from me, dangling her legs off the stool, chewing on the back of a marker cap. Can I be the paint boss? She asked. Even for the big buildings? I clicked it, skimmed once, skimmed again slower, then leaned back so hard the chair creaked. You're hired, I said. Paint boss, official. She fist-pumped like she'd just won the Super Bowl and started scribbling a list of her favorite colors on a napkin. I sat there blinking, realizing I just landed the biggest job of my life, and somehow my daughter thought that made her the boss. I didn't argue. I called the crew that afternoon, Tommy and Jace, and told them we were about to go from 3 to 30. Fast. We'd need help. Real help. I told my accountant we'd need to bring in a real firm, someone who didn't also fix his cousin's truck in the parking lot. Then I drove over to my parents and handed Dad a folded slip of paper with 2 fishing license receipts inside. Yours and Mom's, I said. Forever. You fish when you want. That's the deal now. He tried to grumble something about inflation, but Mom was already tearing up before she read the dates. That night, Sloan texted me she'd be staying at her parents' place for a bit, then sent a second message with a PDF attached. It was a draft of a postnup, drawn up by her mother's lawyer, naturally. Terms, clauses, all that legal armor rich people like to wear in case love starts costing too much. I read the whole thing. Then I deleted it. I didn't reply. Didn't sign. The next day, Brennan showed up to my office with a bottle of scotch and a grin so wide it looked painted on. You finally swung big, my man, he said, setting the bottle down like it sealed the deal. Now we scale. Bring in smart money. Harrington money? I didn't answer. I just kept reviewing insulation bids like the room didn't have a fourth wall. He sat anyway. Come on, you know Martin would jump at this if you gave him the numbers. It's time to level up. You've got real growth now. You don't have to bootstrap every inch I turned toward him, slow. If Martin wanted in, he could have stepped up the night I came in wet, holding his damn watch in my hand. That night, that's when this company needed investors. Brennan shifted in his chair. You're letting your feelings run the company, man. This is business, not payback. No, I said. It's both. I didn't throw him out, but I didn't pour the scotch either. We started hiring right after that. Fast and careful. 4 apprentices from the tech high school came on board that month. Fresh out of shop class, no bad habits yet. One of them, Luis, was 17 and could cut crown molding better than most guys twice his age. He had that steady hand and quiet confidence like someone raised around tools. Wore a pencil behind his ear like it belonged there. I put him on the Northline lobby project right out the gate. The first week on site, we got hit with back-to-back inspections. Plumbing Monday, electrical Tuesday, structural Friday. Ramos, the city inspector, was relentless. She walked like her boots were wired to the ground, clipboard in hand, no time for excuses. She nailed us on minor things, but she was fair. You're not used to jobs this size, she said during a second walkthrough. That's obvious. Fair, I said, but you listen. And you don't bullshit also fair. On Saturday, she came by in jeans and no badge, knocked on the site trailer, and pointed at one of our subs. This guy cuts corners. He's got 3 violations on file. Fire him before he costs you your margin. I fired him that night. At night, I sat at the kitchen table with a pile of estimates and invoices in front of me. June next to me with crayons and superhero stickers. Her scar peeked out of her collar sometimes, just a faint line now. But it felt like a compass needle to me. I couldn't look at it without thinking about the night I walked out of that lake house soaked and shaking. That line on her chest reminded me why I was doing all this, why I was turning down money that came with strings and suits and people who talked about families like assets. Dad, she said one night, tapping my hand. Do we own the paint store now? Not yet, I said, but I got you a budget. She laughed and went back to drawing a purple hotel with hearts on the windows. We'd just wrapped the second Northline install, Tri-Cities property, when the article dropped. I didn't even know it was running until my foreman Jace walked up to me with his phone out. You see this yet? He asked. I took the phone, saw the title across the top of the screen. Builds That Heal. The contractor turning pain into purpose. Midway through the piece, there it was, my quote, plain as drywall. My in-laws picked a party over my kid, and that's when I changed. One line. Out of everything I said, that's the one they bolded. It went viral by lunchtime. First local reposts, then Seattle News, then a regional podcast picked it up. Next thing I knew, producers from shows I'd only ever seen in waiting rooms were blowing up my inbox. Morning talk shows, public radio, one national feature. I said no to most. Said yes to a couple. Always with one rule. The story was about June and the crew. Not me, not the drama, not some hero dad garbage. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted people to understand what it meant when families sold base boats while other families sipped champagne. I figured it might spook a few bidders, maybe even piss off someone at city permits. But I did it anyway, because telling the truth had cost me plenty already. Might as well get something back from it. 3 days later, Amber DM'd me, Chase's wife. Her message was short, direct. I thought you should see this. Attached were screenshots. A bank portal showing a full refund issued for the Aspen wedding package, dated late June, 6 weeks after the party, right around the time I was pawning tools and selling my Bronco. Another screenshot showed Chase's name on a purchase agreement. 22-foot wakeboat. Bought July 12th. Amber wrote, he said the wedding coordinator had a no refund clause. Turns out she had a refund and a loyalty discount. He took the money and bought a toy. I'm filing. Once you see a man clearly, you don't unsee it. I stared at the message for a long time. Didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, I finally typed. And I mean that. She just replied, I know, and that was it. A few days later, my accountant dropped a manila folder on my desk, said, You're going to want to read this sitting down. Inside were printed emails, Brennan's name in the headers, to Martin Harrington, offering to steer Northline phase work toward a new entity, a shell company Brennan had registered behind my back, for a fee. The subject line? Leverage. I sat in my chair for a full minute without moving. Then I buzzed the front desk and told them not to let Brennan leave the building. He strolled in 5 minutes later like we were going to talk about fixtures or hiring. I shut the office door behind him and didn't sit. Who the hell are you? I asked. He blinked, threw up his hands like I was being dramatic. Look, it's not what you think. It's just strategic planning. Long game stuff. You went behind my back, I said. To Martin, the man who watched me beg for help with my daughter and said no because he'd already wired a wedding deposit. It was just a conversation, Brennan said. You're getting emotional again. Wrong sentence. I opened the folder and tossed it across the table. That's your email. That's your name. That's the new LLC you filed with my state license. He went quiet. I'm firing you, I said. Effective immediately. Legal paperwork's already filed. You can't do that. I can. And if you push it, I'll forward these emails to the state board and let your strategic partners explain what a licensing fraud charge does to a subcontractor's future. He opened his mouth to argue. I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer on speaker. Didn't say a word, just let it ring until the voicemail picked up. Thought so, Brennan muttered, then left without touching the scotch bottle he'd left in my office 2 months ago. That night, I went to the Northline site in Bend, just to breathe a little air that didn't stink of betrayal. June's surgeon was there, weirdly enough. He'd seen the article and decided to stop by. I wanted to see what you built, he said. Looks like a man turned a corner. I shook his hand. Didn't say much. Just stood there in my safety vest, nodding like that sentence hadn't hit me square in the chest. Sloan posted something that night, too. Some vague Instagram story with a stock photo of hands holding and the caption, I stand with families. She texted me right after. Can you take the article down? It makes everyone look bad. I read it twice before I set my phone face down on the workbench. Didn't reply. Didn't need to. The Monday after I ignored Sloan's text, I signed a lease on a building in Spokane. Bare bones, needs everything, but it had good bones. We painted the door red and hung our name on the front before the electric was even fully wired. I told the team, we're not waiting to look legit. We build it, then we are it. We opened officially in March, hired locals, gave every apprentice the same thing the full crew got. Health insurance on day one, no tricks. Even when the quotes came in high, I stuck to it, because I remembered what it felt like to sit in a hospital chair thinking, we can't afford this. By August, we'd opened a Denver shop. Same rules, same hustle. The sign went up before the paint dried. Word started spreading. If you swing a hammer for us, you get treated like you matter. That's when I launched the June Fund. I didn't want it to be some splashy PR thing. I just wanted to make sure no dad like me ever had to trade his tools or his truck to keep his kid alive. We hosted our first fundraiser at a gutted community center we were about to remodel. Set up folding chairs and passed around a bucket. Some folks wrote checks, some dropped in 20s. We raised enough to cover 8 surgeries. Dad stood at the mic after we announced the total and tried to thank everyone, but his voice cracked halfway through. He rubbed his eye like something was in it, then said, we couldn't save the boat, but we saved her. That's what matters. People clapped so long I had to take the mic from him. He sat down holding Mom's hand like it was the first day they ever met. A week later, Sloan asked to meet just to talk. We sat across from each other at a cafe she picked. White subway tile, matcha lattes, overpriced everything. She didn't ask about June. Just pulled out her phone. I thought maybe we could get a few pictures, she said, of you and her. I could post something supportive, show we're on good terms. I didn't get angry. I just said, we can co-parent. But keep her off your feed. She looked like she wanted to push, then didn't. We finished our drinks in silence. Not long after that, word got around that Chase lost a promotion. Someone at his firm forwarded the Wakeboat receipt to HR with a timestamp that didn't match the refund excuse. I didn't send it. I didn't even think about it until someone from his department called to confirm the timeline of the wedding funds. I told them the truth and nothing else. I didn't cheer when I heard he got passed over. Didn't feel good. Didn't feel bad either. It just was. Consequences doing their job. The Harrington furniture business started losing contracts not long after. Online retailers undercut them hard. Celeste had probably never added to cart in her life. But the Tide doesn't care about your last name. Doesn't care how many people you pretend to care about either. I bought my parents a small A-frame on Lake Merwin. Nothing massive. Just a place with a dock, a fire pit, and enough quiet to hear your own breath. Dad hung his old fishing lures on a board in the mudroom like war medals. Told June they each had a story. She made him retell the same ones 3 times in a row. Is this the one you caught the snapping turtle with? She asked. No, but close, he said. That was the red popper. This one hooked a lawn chair. They both laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Luis graduated that spring. Came on full-time. First day as a full employee, he asked if the June Fund could name a grant after his little sister who passed 2 years ago from the same defect. Her name was Camilla, he said, rubbing his palm with his thumb. She would have loved this place. We'll name the next one after her, I said, and the one after that. It felt right. That night, I sat at the kitchen table filling out supplier orders while June colored in a comic book next to me. Her scar showed when she reached for a crayon, just a faint line under her shirt. She caught me looking. It doesn't hurt, she said. I forget it's there. I don't, I said. She smiled and went back to coloring. I laid down that night, and for the first time in what felt like years, I slept. Not passed out sleep. Not exhausted. Dead weight sleep. Normal sleep. The kind where your body isn't bracing for a hit. No nightmares. No middle of the night emails. No mental math about what might bounce next week. Just sleep. My assistant buzzed the intercom. Martin and Celeste Harrington are in the lobby. I didn't flinch. Didn't exhale either. Just said, send them in. And kept my hands flat on the desk so I wouldn't clench them into fists. They came in slow, like people trying to move through glass without shattering anything. Martin was in a blazer that didn't quite fit. Shoulders too wide, sleeves too short. Celeste wore a muted beige outfit with a bag that looked like it was trying way too hard to still scream old money. But money had left the room a while ago. Neither one sat. We didn't want to do this here, Martin said, smoothing his hand over the back of the chair like maybe sitting would be a defeat. But we're out of time, Celeste added, voice soft, polished as ever. He cleared his throat. The bank's taking the house. Next month, maybe sooner. We need 128.4 to make it right. He didn't look me in the eye. We figured family sticks together during storms. I let the silence stretch just long enough to see if they'd blink. Then I tapped my phone, scrolled to a saved voicemail, and hit play. The room filled with Celeste's voice, crisp and cold. Brandon is irresponsible. It's not our job to rescue people who make poor financial choices. Then Martin's voice. We have our own priorities. I let it play to the beep, then set the phone on the desk like evidence. Do either of you know what color June's rabbit is? I asked, staring straight at them. You know, the one she held in surgery? Celeste blinked like I'd spoken another language. What? The rabbit. Her comfort toy. Do you know what color it is? They said nothing. Did either of you come sit with her after the surgery? I added. Not the day after. Not the week after. Ever still nothing. I reached into my drawer, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the desk. A cashier's check inside for $128,400. On top was a printed bank transfer confirmation. Martin looked down at it like it might bite him. His hand trembled a little when he picked it up. I waited. Let the moment sit. "This isn't forgiveness," I said. "This is me buying my peace. That's all. After this, we're done." They both nodded, almost in sync, like they'd practiced the move in the car before walking in. I watched Martin tuck the check back into the envelope, careful and quiet, like folding it wrong might cost him another chunk of his reputation. Celeste opened her mouth. "I always meant well, Brandon." "I know it doesn't seem like it, but save it," I cut in. "Spend those words on someone who needs them. I've got a meeting." She closed her mouth, tilted her head like she wanted to say more, but didn't. They turned and left without another word. When the door shut behind them, I stayed in the quiet. Just stood there behind my desk, listening to the hum of the building. Phones ringing down the hall, footsteps echoing off the tile. The HVAC clicked on overhead. I let it all wash over me. And for the first time since the night I stood soaked on their marble steps, something in my chest let go. Not a dramatic release, no cinematic swell of music, just an unclenching, a space opening up where anger used to live. I sat down and looked at the chair across from mine, the one Martin couldn't bring himself to sit in. Then I opened my calendar and unpaused the meeting reminder I'd snoozed when they walked in. The business didn't stop just because someone finally learned how consequences feel. The company picnic landed on the first warm Saturday of spring, out at Blue Lake, under sky so clear it looked fake. We rented the covered pavilion, strung up a cheap banner, and gave every kid a t-shirt and a fishing rod. Didn't matter if their folks swung hammers or pushed paper, every kid got one, no questions. Dad posted up by the water with a cooler of sodas and a folding chair, teaching half our field crew's kids how to tie a clinch knot. He didn't talk much, just pointed, showed, then watched them try. When they got it wrong, he nodded like, "Yep, now do it again." That was his version of praise. June sat next to him, cross-legged in the grass, tying her line over and over until her fingers were sore. After lunch, she asked me something that caught me sideways. "Why do I have one set of grandparents that come to everything and another set that never does?" I looked at her face all sunlit and serious, and said, "Because some folks show up, and that's the kind that counts." She nodded. No follow-up questions. That was the moment I knew she was going to be okay. She wasn't waiting around for people to change anymore. Sloan and I had worked out custody without a single court date. No shouting matches, no custody battle, no lawyer on retainer. Just a schedule taped to the fridge and 2 phones that stayed civil. She'd opened a salon a couple towns over, started posting less, stopped texting me every time someone tagged the business or mentioned my name in a comment. We never signed the post-nup, never needed it. Once we pulled the focus back to June, the rest kind of faded into background noise. Someone told me Brennan landed at a small shop out in Gresham. Low-budget outfit, mostly finish work. When people asked why we weren't in business anymore, I didn't say a word about the emails or the shell company. Just said, we took different roads, and left it there. Let folks write their own endings. Ramos came to the picnic, which surprised the hell out of me. She brought her son, 10, maybe 11, with a tackle box covered in dinosaur stickers. She handed me a soda and said, "You figured out how to build a crew that actually cares. That's not easy in this business," I told her. "You gave me a real shot when you could have buried me." I didn't forget that she smiled and walked back to the water where her kid was trying to bait a hook upside down. Later that week, a realtor emailed me a link. No subject, just the Zillow page. The Harrington Mansion, 10,000 square feet, needs updating, with motivated in bold in the notes. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds, then closed the tab, didn't forward it, didn't screenshot it, didn't say a damn word. It wasn't my house to burn. I had better things to build. That night, June set up her little keyboard on a picnic table and played Lean on Me, slow and proud. She missed a few notes, but nobody cared. The sound carried across the park, soft enough to make people stop what they were doing. Fishing poles paused mid-cast, phone screens lowered, conversations quieted. For that minute and a half, everything was still. On the drive home, she knocked out fast in the back seat, face turned toward the window, a streak of marshmallow on her cheek from the s'mores station. Her shirt had grass stains, her shoelaces were tied uneven, and her scar showed just above the collar. I looked at her in the rear view and thought, this is the life I was supposed to make all along. I'm 56 now, telling you this from a backyard that smells like charcoal and sunscreen. But back then, I was 32 and green enough to think family was a blood type. Turns out it's a verb, something you do or you don't. Dad stood at my grill in his old mariner's cap, showing Ellie, my granddaughter 6, how to flip a burger without pressing the juice out. She looked up at him like he was an astronaut explaining gravity, then told him he was doing it wrong. "Nope," she said, dead serious. "Mom says you gotta let it sizzle a little longer or it cries." He laughed, real deep. "Well, I guess I've been making emotional burgers all my life." Mom was inside with Hazel, her best friend from church, both of them arguing about the right way to do potato salad like the fate of the world depended on celery seed. I didn't weigh in. I just let them win. Because I like eating and I like peace. And you learn to pick your battles by the time you've buried a few. Luis walked in carrying a cardboard box full of kites, his son trailing behind him with paint still on his cheek. Behind them came Ramos, folding chair in one hand, cooler in the other. She picked her spot under the oak tree like she owned the yard. And honestly, she kind of did. We wouldn't be here without the chances she gave. My crew trickled in one by one. Some brought spouses, others showed up solo with store-bought cookies and jokes about overcooking the meat. Nobody showed up empty-handed. That was the rule. Sloane stopped by the fence halfway through the afternoon. She waved, held out a cake pan wrapped in foil. "Chocolate," she said. "June's favorite." I walked over and took it. "Appreciate it." She nodded. "I won't stay." "You're welcome to." She smiled without really smiling. "This works better." We figured out how to be decent without being anything else, and that was enough. June came by to grab the cake, hugged her mom, then ran back to the porch without hesitation. Inside the house, in the hallway by the photos, there's a plaque for the June Fund. It's got a lot of names now, some I've never met. 8 more kids got surgeries this past spring, and my guys built their parents' porches for free. One of them sent me a thank you card with a drawing of a heart holding a hammer. Amber still sends us a holiday card every year. Her boy's getting bigger, gaps in his smile, wild hair, messy joy in every photo. Chase is never in them. I don't ask. I don't spend time chasing ghosts. For a while I thought the turning point was handing Martin that check, watching his hands shake, seeing the color drain out of that arrogance. But that wasn't it. The real move was the next morning, when I got up, tied my boots, and went to work like a man who wasn't mad anymore. Ellie came running up from the yard with a crayon drawing and held it out like it was treasure. "Look," she said, "this is our family." 5 stick figures and a dog with sunglasses. She pointed to each one, Grandma, Grandpa, Mommy, me, June, then the dog. "And this one's you. I gave you muscles. I taped it on the fridge right next to the last inspection permit we passed on the first try. Didn't even care that the tape peeled the paint a little. I can't give you wisdom. I'm not that guy. But I can tell you what I did. I chose the folks who chose us. I paid back what I owed. And I built a life nobody can take. Has your family ever chosen appearances over people? How did you handle it? Share in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Very important to us. Just one click.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.